Have you ever walked a shoreline before sunrise, where the wind smells not of salt alone, but of memory? Have you felt the mist settle on your skin like fingers once known, now forgotten? In that blue hush before day, when time is neither night nor morning, that is when the island speaks. Saaremaa is an island held in the arms of the Baltic, a place veiled in fog, edged with cliffs, and shaped by the breath of storms. Its stones are not still, its trees are not mute, and the waves do not always come from the sea. They say the island once belonged to sea witches, women of tide and shadow, who wove their will into the water, not witches of fire, nor of broom and boiling pot, but of wind and woven seagrass, of storm chants and salt tears. Their magic was not cast in spells, but sung into the turning of the tide. And so it was, one night without moon, a child was born as the tide ran backwards. Her name was Marika. She came into the world beneath a thatch roof dripping with rain, her mother's cries echoing off the stones like seabird calls. The midwife, old and crooked as driftwood, whispered no blessing, only silence, as the child took her first breath and the wind fell still outside. That hush was not peace, it was reverence. Even the storm paused to listen. Marika's eyes were strange, grey, not like stone, but like fog, and her hair dark as the sea at its deepest. She never cried loudly, but when she wept, the wind rose. When she laughed, gulls circled the house, and when she grew angry, the sea withdrew from the shore, leaving fish flopping on sand like warnings. The village elders took notice, but said nothing, for on Saaremaa, silence is a kind of respect, and the women who lived at the edge of the cliff, the grandmothers of Salt and Stitch, came for her, carrying nets, not for fishing, but for dreams. They raised her in a stone cottage where wind had worn away even the names of the dead. They taught her the old songs, the ones with no words, only hums that shaped the weather. They showed her how to listen to the sea's moods and how to stir a bowl of storm using only breath. She learned that the moon had names no man remembered, and that sea glass was once lightning that kissed the water. She grew like mist, slowly, with grace, and without notice until she was everywhere. Marika became a woman on the longest night of the year, when the auroras danced like spirits above the sea, and snow fell into the waves like ashes from a distant fire. They gave her a cloak of woven kelp, a ring made from whalebone, and a name no man could pronounce. It was not a ceremony, it was a return, and all was well, until he came. His ship was not large, nor was it strong, a coastal trader fleeing a storm. But the storm was not a storm, it was a calling. The sea had sent him, and the sea was jealous. He was young, this man, with hands calloused by rope and wood, eyes the colour of storm-swept oak, and a voice roughened by salt. He washed ashore not screaming, but dreaming. And when he opened his eyes, it was Marika's breath he met. She found him half buried in kelp, his pulse faint, his spirit torn between sea and sky. She laid him on her stone floor, wrapped him in sealskin, and fed him broth seasoned with memory. He healed, and as days turned to weeks, he followed her like a shadow, not because he was lost, but because he had never known a light so quiet. She said little, but in her silence the world softened, and when he smiled, the gulls flew in strange patterns overhead, as if warning her of what even she did not yet see. They walked cliffs together. They lit driftwood fires and watched the stars fall into the sea. They whispered, not to each other, but to the wind, and the wind carried their words away, back to the ocean. And then came the night he kissed her. The storm came not from the sky, but from the sea floor, where old gods sleep in shells and coral. The waves rose not with rage, but with heartbreak. The tide turned sharp and cold, and the fish vanished from the shore. The grandmothers gathered on the hill, their cloaks flapping like wings of ancient birds. They saw what Marika could not, that the sea would not share. Love, it is said, is not forbidden, but some hearts are already promised. And Marika's had been bound to the sea the night she was born. That night, the man dreamt of drowning, but not in water, in voices, women singing in a language too old for flesh. He awoke, gasping, the taste of salt heavy on his tongue, though no wave had touched him. Marika knew then what she must do. She led him to the edge of the cliff where the sea opened wide, a mouth of mist and memory. She held his hands and they said no words. She pressed her forehead to his and breathed, once, deeply, into the space between them. Then she turned and walked into the sea, not like a woman drowning, but like someone returning to a place she had left too long. The waves did not crash, they parted, and the mist closed behind her. The man stood there until dawn, his tears blending with the rain. And when he left, he took nothing. Not her cloak, not her ring, not even the shells she had once braided into his sleeve. Years passed. The grandmothers vanished one by one into stone and sand. The house on the cliff collapsed, devoured by moss and tide, and the island became quiet again. But the story did not end. For when the wind rises sudden on a still day, when the gulls circle without sound, when a sailor dreams of grey-eyed women singing just beyond the shore, they say she walks again, not on land, but in the sea mist, barefoot, silent, and watching. Some say she waits for him. Others say she is the storm now. But the sea knows, and the sea does not forget. But the mists hold another tale. Have you ever heard a sound that wasn't meant for the living? A chime with no source, no clapper, no hand to swing it. Only a feeling, rising, like mist in your chest. They say such bells ring from places forgotten, from cities pulled under by time, sorrow, or sea. Visby was once a crown upon the sea's brow, a walled city of merchants and churches, stone towers and silent prayers. It stood proud along the edge of Gotland, watching ships come and go like slow-moving ghosts. But pride is a thin stone, and when pride is louder than humility, the sea listens. Long ago, not in days counted, but in the breath of wind-carved stone, there was a church in Visby whose bell was said to be unlike any other. Forged not of iron alone, but with a single flake of silver moon and a pinch of grave dust, it was a bell that rang true. Its sound was not loud, but deep. A sound you felt in your bones, not your ears. And the bell did not ring for time. It rang for truth, for confession, for grief. The townspeople came to depend on it. It told not by schedule, but by sorrow. When a child was born sick, it rang. When a sailor died unspoken, it rang. When silence settled too heavy on the city, it rang. But over time, the people of Visby changed. Trade made them rich. Ships brought silk and cinnamon, gold and glass. The bell tolled less and less, not because grief had vanished, but because no one listened. They built taller towers, hung newer bells, and painted the old one black to quiet its song. And yet, there was one who still heard it. A boy named Elias, son of a candlemaker, and a woman who dreamed in sleep tongues. He was thin, pale, and slow to speak. The other children mocked him, said he was haunted or half asleep. But Elias didn't mind, because he could hear things they could not. At night, when the wind passed through the alleyways, he heard whispers. Not voices exactly, but intentions. When the bell rang, which it did, though no one else seemed to notice, Elias would wake with tears on his cheeks and the taste of salt in his mouth. He began to visit the church, not for prayer, but to sit in the dust beneath the silent tower and close his eyes. And sometimes, when no one was near, he would hum the tone of the bell, low, slow, deep. And in the silence that followed, the bell would hum back. The priests did not like this. They said he was disturbing the sanctuary. But the bell, old and cold, never judged. Then came the night the sea rose without warning, No storm, no wind, no thunder, just water, moving like memory. It lapped at the docks, then the cobbled streets, then the church steps. The people fled to the towers. They lit candles. They prayed. They screamed. But the sea kept rising, slow and certain, like it had always intended to return. And then the bell rang. Once, twice, 3 times, louder than it ever had, not in sound, but in sorrow. Elias stood in the church, alone, the water up to his knees. He placed his hands on the tower wall and whispered not a prayer, but a promise. "Let me hear you once more," he said. "I'll remember." And the bell tolled again. But this time, the walls cracked. The great stone blocks, aged by centuries of silence, gave way. The bell, heavy with forgotten grief, broke free and fell, not with violence, but with grace, into the sea's arms. And as it sank, the sea stopped rising. The water fell away like a held breath, and the city was spared. But the bell was gone. They searched, of course, dove with nets and chains, candles and relics, but they found nothing, no trace, only silence. Elias grew older. He stopped speaking to people. He spent his days on the cliffs, looking out to sea, a book of blank pages in his lap. He wrote nothing. But each night, just before sleep, he would hum the bell's tone, and sometimes, very faintly, from beneath the waves, it would hum back. Years passed. He became a man, then an old man, then a memory, but the bell still rings. Not for weddings, not for worship, but for sorrow. They say if you stand on the shore of Visby in fog and close your eyes, you may hear it, not with your ears, but in the hush between heartbeats, a deep sound, full of longing. Some say Elias still walks the shore at night, barefoot, listening. Others say he became the bell, its soul, its sorrow, its silence. But the sea remembers, and when grief returns, it rings, once, twice, 3 times, not to warn, not to punish, only to say, "I was here, and I still am." The chime fades into silence. Have you ever felt the past watching you from a locked window? Have you heard the clink of chains in a room no longer there, the drag of boots through corridors that should be empty? Some places are not haunted by spirits alone, but by memory, rust, and silence that will not loosen its grip. In the north of Latvia, where the Baltic winds bite even in summer, there lies a place once built for war, now buried in stillness. It is called Karosta, a naval base of brick and bone, of towers and tunnels, where iron once ruled and flesh was made to forget its softness. The sea licks its edge like a dog returning to a long-forgotten master. The trees beyond it grow crooked, as though bowing away from something they do not speak of, and the air smells of old salt, wet steel, and prayers left unanswered. They say Karosta never sleeps, even after the soldiers left, even after the walls crumbled and the gates rusted shut. Something remains, something walks. Long ago, before the wars with flags and medals, before the ships with engines and guns, there was a forge at the edge of Karosta, a blacksmith's place, humble and dark, where iron was not yet angry. In this forge lived a man called Osvalds, and with him, his daughter, Lena. Lena was not like other children. She did not run, nor chatter, nor play. She listened, to walls, to locks, to wind that slipped through the cracks like breath. She would sit for hours beside the forge, watching her father shape iron into obedience. And then, when no one watched, she would lay her hands on the scraps, twisted bits of metal, and whisper to them. Sometimes they glowed warm beneath her fingers. Sometimes they wept. It is said she had the sight, but not the kind that sees the future. She saw the past, trapped in objects, echoing through cold steel. When she held a soldier's helmet, she gasped and dropped it, murmuring, "Too much fear, too much waiting." When she sat on an old bench, she laughed suddenly, touched by a memory not her own. The officers grew uneasy. Karosta was no place for softness. It was a machine of discipline, rust, and silence. And Lena, this girl with whisper hands and hollow eyes, unsettled the clockwork. So they kept her away, locked the gates of the main fort, told her father to control her, silence her, send her away. But iron does not forget its maker, and Lena had already been claimed by Karosta itself. One winter, when snow drifted over the parade grounds like a burial cloth, a new commander arrived, tall, sharp-eyed, and impatient. He ordered the old tunnels sealed. Too many men had heard whispers down there. Too many had come out with trembling hands and stories that curled the blood. But one night, as the wind howled like wolves lost at sea, Lena vanished. Her father searched every hallway, every shed, every guard post, every path to the shore. But she was gone. No footprints in the snow, no open doors, no sounds. Only silence. For 3 days and 3 nights, Oswald sat beside his forge, hammer idle, the coals cold. And on the 4th night, he heard it. A knock, not on the door, but on the iron wall of the old tunnel beneath the forge. He opened it. Inside, the air was damp, thick with mildew and the taste of time. And there she was, Lena, standing with her hand pressed to the rusted wall, eyes closed. She turned to him and whispered, "They're still here." Listening. He did not ask who. That night she began to walk Karosta differently, not like a girl, but like a key. Doors opened for her that had long refused hinges. Windows cleared of frost when she passed. The old dogs, blind and broken, followed her like lambs. She spoke to no one. But the officers grew restless. Lights flickered in rooms long abandoned. Footsteps echoed in the barracks when all were asleep. The chapel bell rang once, though its rope had been cut a decade before. One soldier, brave and foolish, followed her. He saw her enter the eastern tower, its staircase collapsed years before. He climbed the rubble after her, panting, whispering her name. Inside, he found the chamber empty, only a mirror, old, cracked, veiled in dust. But when he looked into it, he did not see himself. He saw soldiers, dozens of them, weeping in silence, their mouths moving without sound. He saw Lena standing among them, her hand raised as if conducting a choir of the forgotten. He screamed. They found him the next morning, curled in the snow, his eyes wide, his voice stolen. He never spoke again. The commander ordered her confined. Said she was a threat, a curse. But when they came for her, she was gone. And so was her father. The forge stood cold. The tools lay scattered. The iron wept rust. In the years that followed, Karosta fell. The soldiers left. The ships stopped coming. The sea advanced, taking inch by inch of the stone that had once defied it. But the stories did not stop. Visitors came, drawn by curiosity and silence. Tourists, historians, ghost hunters. And many left changed. Some spoke of a girl in a long coat, walking the halls barefoot. Others described a forge still burning in the middle of the night, though the chimney had collapsed long ago. A few, the quietest, said they had heard voices in the walls, software metallic, weeping. Today, Karosta remains, not as a base, but as a wound. A memory made of brick and bone, where iron still listens. And if you go there, if you dare walk those corridors at twilight, when the fog from the sea curls low, place your hand on the wall, close your eyes, and you may hear her, Lina, calling not for help, but to remind the world. Some ghosts wear no chains. They walk free. They remember, and they are not finished speaking. Wind moves through a corridor of rust. Have you ever held amber in your hand and wondered what it remembers? Not just the light inside, or the insect frozen in time, but the warmth, the weight, the sorrow caught in its golden hush. They say amber is the sea's memory turned solid, a grief too deep to melt. And if that is true, then somewhere out there, drifting beyond the edge of what maps dare to draw, Sails the ship of amber tears. This is not a tale of shipbuilders or sails of linen, nor of timber carved by mortal hands. This is a story of mourning turned to motion, of sorrow given a hull and a purpose. Long ago, before clocks counted time, when night was still holy, the Sea Queen lost a child. No storm, no shipwreck, no wound, just gone. Some say the child was stolen by land dwellers. Others whisper that the child simply walked into the sky and never returned. Whatever the truth, the sea wept for 7 tides, each wave heavier than the last, and from her tears amber formed. It washed ashore along the Baltic coast, in dunes and forest hollows, where fishermen found it glinting like fallen suns. But deep beneath the surface, in the silence only the sea herself could hear, she gathered it, piece by piece, and shaped a ship. The hull was smooth as skin. The deck shimmered like honey, and its mast, if you can call it that, was a single strand of light frozen in mourning. No nails held it, no ropes bound it. It floated not by wind, but by memory. They say it only appears at night, and only when the moon forgets her shape. But once it came ashore. A boy named Elias, no, not the same Elias who once heard the drowned bell, but another child of silence, found it. He had wandered from the village, chasing the soft blue glow that pulsed like breath beyond the dunes. He thought it a fallen star. But when he reached the shore, he saw the amber vessel, rocking gently where no tide moved. No anchor, no crew, no sound, only a song, so soft it felt like wind in the bones. Elias stepped aboard. The wood was warm, or rather, not wood, something smoother, richer. Amber, not hard like stone, but soft like sorrow. He walked its deck and found no tiller, no sails, no map, only a single lantern, flickering with light that did not burn, but remembered. And then the ship moved, not forward, but backward, through memory, through grief, through stories the world had sealed away. The sky above turned to mist, the stars blinked and were gone. The sea darkened, not with threat, but with weight. He saw things, not with his eyes, but with his skin. A woman weeping beside a tide pool, her hair crowned in kelp. A sailor returning to shore only to find no one remembered him. A mother laying her child into the sea, singing lullabies to the foam. Each vision turned to amber beneath his feet. Each sorrow he witnessed became a gem in the ship's spine. Elias did not cry. He could not. The ship drank his tears before they reached his cheeks. And slowly, memory left him. His name faded first, then the scent of his home. Then the voice of his mother, the sound of his father's hammer, the taste of snow. But he was not afraid. There was peace in forgetting. And still, the ship sailed on. It passed beneath bridges never built, past cliffs that sighed with the voices of the drowned, through waters where no moonlight reached. At last, it stopped, not at land, but at a place between tides, where even the sea forgets her own depth. There, Elias stepped to the edge of the deck and looked down. Below, he saw a forest, not of trees, but of statues, figures carved of amber, hundreds, each one bearing a different sorrow, each one with eyes closed, as if dreaming. And in the center, a small figure, child-sized, hair of gold, eyes open, the Sea Queen's child. The ship lowered gently. The deck kissed the surface of that memory. Elias stepped down, and as his foot touched the amber shore, he knew what the ship had done. It had gathered sorrow, drop by drop, until it was full enough to return the lost one. The Sea Queen appeared, not as a wave, not as a woman, but as light made soft. She looked at Elias. She did not speak, but her silence filled him with a warmth he had never known. She touched his brow, and in that moment, all he had forgotten returned. His name, his life, his grief. And then she let him go. The ship rose again, but this time, without him. It sailed upward, yes, upward, into the fog that had become sky, and vanished. Elias awoke on the shore, curled in seaweed, the dawn breaking over his face. In his hand, a single piece of amber, small and warm. Inside it, a teardrop. Not his. Heron. He returned to the village, though no one knew him. He built a small hut near the water and became a carver. But he carved, not wood nor stone, only amber. Tiny figures, faces of sorrow, shapes of ships, lanterns that would never burn. Visitors came from far. They said his art had soul. He only smiled and said, "They're not mine. I just help them speak." And at night, he would sit by the shore holding that first piece of amber, humming the tune the ship had sung. They say the ship still sails. Not often. But when sorrow ripens, when grief grows too full, it appears. To gather, to remember, to return what the sea has lost. So if you ever find amber glowing in your hand, warm without cause, hold it close. It may be a piece of a ship still sailing somewhere, carrying the weight of tears that never touched the ground. A wave sighs like a cradle. Have you ever wandered along a shore and felt something beneath your feet? Something hidden, heavy, not quite of this earth. They say some treasures are buried not in chests, but beneath layers of silence and salt, beneath sand and stone and stories best left untold. Ventspils is a town shaped by the sea, its streets humming with the sound of ships loading and unloading, and the quiet prayers of those who watch the horizon. But beneath the cobblestones and docks, beneath the waves that kiss the shore, lies a secret that refuses to rest. It is said that long ago, when pirates ruled these waters, they buried their gold, not for greed, but for safety. They did not trust the land, nor the men who walked it. So the gold was hidden beneath the earth, beneath the tides, beneath the weight of promises made in shadow. But the gold was not theirs to keep. They say a woman in white watches the shores of Ventspils, her bare feet trailing a veil of sand like bridal silk. No crown, no jewels, only sorrow. She is no bride, though the sea calls her the lady of the shore. Her name is forgotten by most, but some whisper it. Aina. Once, long before Ventspils was a town, she lived in a village swallowed by the sea. She was a keeper, guardian of the tide's offerings, protector of sunken vows. When ships came to rest beneath the waves, she stood watch. When gold sank with them, she claimed it, not for greed, but for balance. One day a merchant came to Ventspils, bright-eyed and hungry for wealth. He heard the whispers about the gold beneath the sands and decided to seek it for himself. He did not believe in old stories or sea spirits. To him, gold was gold, and it was meant to be taken. He walked the shore by moonlight, lantern in hand, digging where the waves had drawn maps only the sea could read. At first, he found nothing. But then his shovel struck something hard, a chest bound in iron, heavy with salt and age. He pried it open, his breath catching as gold coins spilled into the sand. But before he could claim his prize, a chill swept the shore. The lady of the shore appeared, her white dress billowing like mist, her eyes deep pools of forgotten sorrow. She did not speak, but her gaze was a command, a warning. The merchant laughed, calling her ghost and fool. But when he turned to gather his treasure, he found the gold had vanished. The chest was empty, the coins were gone. He ran, his heart pounding like thunder. And they say the sea rose behind him, waves curling like fingers, erasing his footprints. After that night, the merchant was never seen again. Some say the sea claimed him, others say he wanders, searching the shore for gold that slipped through his fingers like water. Years later, a soldier came to Ventspils. He had heard the stories and thought himself brave enough to find the treasure. He walked the sands under a silver moon, following the patterns the tides left behind. But when he reached the spot where the gold was said to rest, he knelt and wept. Not for gold, but for the stories the sea had swallowed, the lives lost, the promises broken, the silent songs beneath the waves. He wept until dawn, until the sea pulled him in, cold and sure, and the lady of the shore watched, her veil trailing like smoke. Then came a child, barefoot and curious, who asked not for gold, but for a story. The child sat on the rocks and listened as the lady whispered the secrets of the sea, tales of loss, love, and the price of keeping balance. The child did not ask to take or to keep, only to remember. And in that moment, the gold beneath Ventspils became something more than treasure. It became a promise that some things are not meant to shine, only to be remembered. So if you walk the shores of Ventspils and see a figure in white, do not fear. She is a keeper, a guardian of stories and silence, and she will teach you that the greatest gold lies not beneath the sand, but in the heart that remembers. Footsteps fade into surf. Have you ever wondered what lies beneath the restless waves, beyond the reach of sunlight? Not just the fish and the stone, but something older, something forgotten by time and memory. They say beneath the Baltic's cold surface sleeps a forest, deep and silent, where shadows grow tall like ancient trees. The forest is not made of wood, nor is it made of leaf or flower. It is made of memory, of breath, of stories whispered in salt and shadow. Long ago, before men marked the land with borders and names, the sea was different. It was not a boundary, but a doorway, a veil between worlds, thin and trembling like a spider's silk. They say the forest once grew on land, rich, dark, and full of life. Trees so tall their branches brushed the clouds, leaves that shimmered with unseen light. And in that forest lived creatures of air and earth, spirit and flesh. But time changed. The forest sank beneath the sea, swallowed by tides that whispered promises and forgotten songs. No one knows why. Some say it was the wrath of the gods. Others say it was the earth itself, bending and breaking under the weight of dreams. And so the forest sleeps. But not quite. Fishermen tell of nets that catch nothing but amber and shadow. Sailors speak of shapes, beneath the waves, tall and silent, moving with the slow grace of trees in the windless deep. Children hear songs in the quiet of night, melodies that rise and fall like waves, full of longing and loss. One story speaks of a girl named Ira. She was born in a village by the sea, where the wind carried the scent of pine and salt. Her eyes were the color of twilight, and her hair shimmered with the green of deep waters. From a young age, she felt the pull of the sea, not just the surface, but what lay beneath. She would walk the shore for hours, listening to the waves, feeling the forest's heartbeat in the stones. Ira's grandmother told her the old tales, stories of the forest below the sea, where spirits danced and waited. She warned her to be careful, to respect the water's edge, for the sea is a keeper of secrets and a taker of souls. But Ira was restless. One day, as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in blood and gold, she followed a light beneath the waves. Not a light from the sky or the shore, but one that pulsed from the depths, soft, steady, alive. She dove. The water was cold, but not cruel. It wrapped around her like a breath, carrying her deeper into silence. And there, beneath the waves, she saw it, the forest. Tall trunks rising from the sea floor, branches reaching upward, swaying with the currents, leaves shimmering like glass, casting fractured light on the sand. And in the heart of the forest, a clearing. In that clearing, a stone altar, carved with runes lost to time, glowing faintly in the dark. Ira approached. The runes spoke not in words, but in feelings. Sorrow, hope, love, and loss. They told of a promise made long ago between sea and earth. A promise to protect, to remember, to never forget. As she reached out to touch the altar, a figure emerged from the shadows. A man, tall and pale, his eyes deep as the ocean. He wore robes woven from seaweed and light, and his voice was the sound of tides. He called himself the Guardian. He told Era that the forest was alive, not just with trees, but with the memories of those lost to the sea, that it was a place where the earth and water met in silence and song. He said the forest waited for a keeper, someone to listen, to protect, to remember. Era did not hesitate. She stayed. She became the voice of the forest below the sea, a bridge between worlds, and the sea calmed. The fishermen's nets filled with fish again. The sailors' voices no longer trembled. The children's songs grew clear and bright. But Era's eyes held the weight of the deep. For she knew the forest still sleeps, waiting for the tides to turn, waiting for the world to remember. And so, when the wind rises and the sea turns grey, some say you can hear her song, a melody woven from salt and shadow, light and loss. A song that asks, what do we remember when all else is forgotten? What do we keep when the tide claims everything? The sea exhales a breath of ancient trees. Have you ever walked a shoreline at dusk, when the sea is not sea and the sky is not sky, but something in between? Have you ever seen the last flicker of a lighthouse and wondered who it was lit for? They say in Klaipeda, where the river meets the cold sea and gulls cry like lost spirits, there stands a tower. Old, stone-boned, veined with rust and storm, it leans slightly like a weary keeper, and its light has not flickered for over 100 years, but still, it glows, faintly, rarely, only when the mist thickens so deep that even memory forgets which way is home. They call it the last light. And though no flame burns inside it, and no lens turns in its weathered top, sailors speak of it. Of how, in moments of greatest peril, when the storm is not sky-born, but soul-born, the light returns, a quiet pulse in the fog, a heartbeat at the edge of forgetting. This is the tale the sea whispers to those who listen closely. The tale of Ansel, the keeper who never left. Ansel was born in Klaipeda when it was still wrapped in cobblestones and salt. He was a quiet boy who loved lanterns more than laughter, who watched the sea the way some watch the stars. He believed every wave carried a message. He believed lighthouses were not just for ships, but for the wandering heart. When he came of age, he took the post of night keeper in the great tower. He climbed its steps each evening, wound the mechanism, trimmed the wick, polished the lens with breath and care. And when the storm came, as it always did, he stood at its top like a flame inside stone, guiding the lost back to shore. But one year, the storms grew stranger, not wilder, but older, as if something buried beneath centuries had begun to stir. Winds blew in patterns Ansel had never seen. Ships disappeared without a cry. The sea grew glassy, then black, then wrong. And one night, a ship approached with no flags, no markings, no sound but the clinking of metal. Its hull was forged not of wood, but iron. Its sails were chain. No crew stood upon it, and yet it moved, steady as a hymn. Ansel lit the tower's fire higher, brighter. The glass blazed with golden flame, but the ship did not change course. It headed toward the rocks. In desperation, Ansel left the tower. He raced down the cliff, barefoot on frost-wet grass, shouting into the gale. But his voice was swallowed. The ship struck stone, and in the shatter of metal and silence, it vanished. No wreck, no ripple, only emptiness. In the days that followed, Ansel returned to the tower again and again. He lit the lamp, though no ship passed. He polished the glass, though no light shone. People said the lighthouse had gone dark, but not to Ansel. He still saw it, not with eyes, but with something deeper. Each night, he tended it with reverence, whispering stories to the lens, singing to the flame that no longer burned. They say time forgot him, that he grew old, but did not age, that the sea claimed him, but not his body. One storm-thick night, the tower stood silent. No keeper, no flame, no voice, only mist. And then, a flicker, a light, faint as breath, real as sorrow. It shone once, then again, and every so often, it returns, the last light. Some believe Ansel still climbs the stairs, barefoot and ghost-born, keeping vigil for lost sailors and souls. Some say he waits for the iron ship to return. Others believe he became the light itself. Not fire, not wind, but memory made luminous. But ask any fisherman in Klaipeda where to turn when the compass spins wild and the stars hide their eyes. And they will tell you, look for the light that should not be, the one that shines not for the sea, but for the soul. And so the tale ends, but the story breathes. For every sea has its secrets, every mist its memory, and every heart a shoreline where light waits patiently to be seen again. Was it ever a tower, truly? Or just a dream shaped like stone, holding the breath of the forgotten? And though the Baltic now slumbers beneath a hush of stars and silt, its stories still walk the shores, still whisper through pine and frost, still wait in the dark for a voice, like yours, to remember them home.